Ashrawi is a senior Palestinian diplomat, former PLO executive committee member. She is with us from Ramallah in the West Bank. Hanan Ashrawi, it's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, John.
Even if the president of the Palestinian Authority wanted to try and rein in Hamas right now, it seems Mahmoud Abbas has almost zero influence on what happens in Gaza. He could not try and stop Hamas if he wanted to, could he?
Well, the question is not whether Mahmoud Abbas can rein in or stop violence or whatever. It's surrealistic. It's absurd how when you cover the situation, you start talking about Hamas as though this came out of the blue. You don't even mention the term occupation. The fact that Israel is holding a whole nation captive has provoked this confrontation deliberately in Jerusalem and with the prayers in the mosque and by trying to carry out ethnic cleansing in Sheikh Jarrah and so on. If you do not frame the context, somehow you are playing into the spin and the misleading propaganda of the Israeli machine. This is incredible. We are a people under occupation, and everybody talks in the West talks about Israel's right to self-defense. When you have I've never heard in the world people who are occupying an army that is occupying a captive people and then claiming self-defense when it starts shelling and bombing and destroying homes and people's lives. This is not self-defense. This is absolute aggression and the occupation. Let the Palestinian people go, and then you will have peace and quiet. I'm sorry, I had to say this.
No, I appreciate you. You make very good points, and I understand exactly what you're saying. The reality is, though, that every time Hamas starts this missile fire into Israel, for whatever reason, for whatever justification there is, the Israelis respond with a level of aggression which so many people have declared, you know, the Goldstone report, going all the way back to the Goldstone report in 2009, as war crimes. The asymmetric level of violence being used by the Israelis against the Palestinians have been, you know, is being investigated by a number of organisations now. But the reality is that thousands of Palestinians in Gaza could end up dead because not just what Israel's doing, but because they're being promoted by Hamas. Now, whatever the reasons behind that, surely, and this is what I put to Mark Regev, just last hour, there is a better way that will not leave so many people dead in Gaza.
Absolutely. I agree. There is a better way, which is to deal with the causes of this violence, to deal with the causes of these constant attacks on Gaza and the constant killing of innocent civilians. I like his surgical strikes that kills civilians and women and children. Anyway, there is a better way. If you address the core issue of Israel's occupation, of Israel's ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem, of Israel's supreme provocation when it starts attacking worshippers during the month of Ramadan in the mosque, when you try to deal with the fact that Israel is acting as a rogue state entirely outside the law, totally given not just permission, but cover to act with impunity by saying it's self-defense, when the Palestinians not only have no right to self-defense, they also have the pressure and the blackmail in order to succumb and to accept their fate. This is not acceptable. So the real causes are there. It's obvious. There can be no peace and security for anybody, so long as there is this situation of glaring injustice, of egregious violations of human rights and international law, and then they try to justify it with all sorts of misleading spin. Violence should stop, of course, but the occupation is a form of constant aggression that we live under. The people in Gaza are like people in a cage and with nowhere to go, with nowhere to hide. They do not have the Iron Dome protection. They do not have shelters. They have no place. They are the most densely populated area in the world. And they don't even have sirens to tell them what's happening. Suddenly they get all these shells and bombs raining on them. So let's put things in perspective. And I agree, there has to be intervention to stop this lethal situation. You cannot stop the occupation. Right now, you have to curb Israeli violence and violations.
And this is the thing. There is the big picture, and obviously there needs to be a peace process here, which is not happening, to try and resolve the outstanding, long-running issues here.
We need intervention. We need protection for Palestine. We need accountability for Israel. It cannot constantly get away with murder, literally.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you have people dying. And so another veteran of Palestinian politics, Mustafa Barghouti, he blames the violence squarely on Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister's personal legal problems. Here he is. Listen to this.
Yeah.
The real opportunistic person here is Netanyahu, who is trying to use this fight, using the blood of Palestinians and Israelis, to escape the fact that he is threatened with 3 cases of corruption and just to stay in power as prime minister. What's happening is a war crime, and it should not be allowed to continue.
You know, he's not the first to make this point, but it seems Hamas was more than eager to give Netanyahu a fight. And they're being driven by their own political motives, which have a lot to do with improving their standing among the people of Gaza and the West Bank.
That's true. People have their agendas. Hamas is trying to send a message that Palestinians aren't going to be just passive victims all the time, and that there is a price to be paid if you're going to do all these things as an occupying power. And yes, Netanyahu has cynically, really, not just exploited the situation, but he provoked confrontations. He provoked the Palestinian people beyond endurance, because he wants to say that he's Mr. Security, that we're facing a military or security crisis, and so on. And so he needs to stay in power, and he can stay out of prison for corruption. Still, this cynical manipulation of situation has been characteristic of Netanyahu all his career. But the problem is that people, not just everybody, the whole world, somehow seems to ignore these manipulative reasons and seems to ignore this unbridled violence by the occupation, and to start somewhere where Hamas gets in and says enough is enough. Hamas gave them, and I'm no admirer of Hamas, as you know, but they gave them an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Once, twice, and they said, you have to stop this because you are provoking the Palestinian people. You are targeting the holiest site. This is the month of Ramadan. There are worshippers. Hundreds, thousands of worshippers were in the mosque when they were tear gassed, when they used stun grenades on them, when they injured hundreds of people. They arrested hundreds more. It's the occupation on the rampage. It's a total act of incitement and provocation, and then they start complaining that they have to have a free hand in order to carry out self-defense. Israel has the responsibility of abiding by international law, of respecting human rights, of understanding that there are values and morals that have to influence behavior, even of the most cruel and extreme right-wing racist coalition government in Israel. These are things that cannot be allowed to continue in this 21st century, when we think we have a rules-based international multilateral system that respects human rights and considers all human beings as equals. Right now, changing this lethal equation of Israel acting without any kind of curbs, restraints, or accountability, and the Palestinians constantly blamed, even though they have very little power in terms of their own lives, and even though Israel is systematically carrying out a process of oppression, of discrimination, and of course of ethnic cleansing. And the Palestinian people everywhere are one people. As you've rightfully said, there were not just the mob violence, the racism inherent in Israel has come out into the open now.
Right.
For decades, the Palestinians in Israel, and they are not Arabs just like that, they are Palestinians in their ancestral home. They are the indigenous people against whom Israel has exercised the worst form of discrimination. And now it's all, the chickens are coming home to roost. But
Sorry
anyway,
to interrupt.
we are one people, whether in exile, in refugee camps, under occupation, or within a racist system in Israel. The injustice and the oppression has to stop. This is how you deal with a very lethal and toxic situation.
Hanan Ashrawi, thank you for being with us. We very much appreciate your time and your views and your opinions. Hanan Ashrawi there for us in Ramallah. Thank you, ma'am. Well,